Hey, how's it going? Ozzy here from Pine Supine. In this video, I'm going to share with you what I've found to be the easiest workflow when working with Superior Drummer 3. So let's jump in and take a look. Okay, so you can see I've got Superior Drummer loaded up here. Now, I've found that the fastest and easiest way just to get rolling when you're wanting to write or record a song is just to pick one of these presets that comes with the software. So in this case, I'm actually using the Death and Darkness expansion, which, as a side note, I believe is just the cream of the crop. If you haven't already checked this expansion out, definitely have a look. I think there's some of the best raw drum sounds that you can get. So once I've gone through and found a preset that I liked, I'll generally, depending on what song I'm working on, I'll either go in and try and find some grooves that fit with the song, or I will just go in and program in all of the parts myself. Just depends on what song you're working on and how you want to do it. And then once I've got my MIDI all programmed in and it sounds great, the next step I like to do is bounce this MIDI to separate audio tracks. So the best way to do that is to come down here to track, and we'll click that and click export song as audio files. And this is going to bring up a couple of options here. So always choose 24-bit quality. It just means that the files will have a higher resolution and will just generally sound better. And this option here is if you only want to bounce a specific area. So if I cancel out of that and say, for instance, I've got this area here that I want to highlight and I only want to bounce that to audio, I can highlight that and then go back into here and select export bounce loop area. But for this song, I want to export the whole song, so I'm just going to cancel out of that and get rid of that. And then I'm going to go back into export song and I'm going to leave that unchecked. And then I'm going to check 24-bit and go over to this advanced tab here. Now, once we're in the advanced tab, we've got a couple of options. You can see we've got bounce output channels and we've got bounce microphone channels. So if we select this first option here, what that's going to mean is, if I just cancel out of that for a second, whatever our mixer is routed to, whatever the output channels of our mixer are routed to, those are going to be bounced to separate audio files. So for example, in this preset here, all of the individual mics are routed to these buses here, and all of these buses are just simply going to output 1 and 2. So if we were to come back and select bounce output channels, we would just get one audio file because everything is just going to one output. If, say, we wanted each individual bus here to be on a separate audio file, we could go out and select different outputs, and then when we come back into here and select bounce output channels, each output that we've selected will be bounced to a separate audio file. But the option I generally like to use is this bounce microphones channels, because what this will do is just give us the raw drum sounds pre-mixer. So it will ignore whatever preset we've chosen, because remember, we just chose a preset just to give us something to listen to while we're working on recording and writing the song. But now when it comes time to mix, I generally like to start from scratch and just have the raw drum sounds. So if we select this bounce microphones channel, what that will do is bounce each individual track here as a separate audio file. So that's generally the one that I like to choose. I generally ignore this split microphones channels by Close Mic Instruments. What this will do is, if we say selected the overheads, if we bounced it out, we would get one overheads track that's all of the bleed from all of the instruments, and then we get one overheads track that's just the close mic on the cymbal, so we'd only hear the close mic of the cymbal. That can be good if you want to have more options when it comes to mixing, but generally I just like to keep it simple and just leave these off so that our overheads just get all of the bleed from everything. Again, this split close mic audio from bleed will do that for all of the tracks. So you'll have all your bleed tracks as separate audio files and all of your close mic tracks as separate audio files, but I just generally like to leave these unticked. Then we've got force enable all bleed. This is totally up to you whether you want to check this or not. This basically just means that every single track here will have all of the bleed from all of the instruments enabled. A lot of people like this because it's more natural, it's more realistic. When you go to mic up a drum kit, you know, if you put a microphone on the snare drum or the kick drum, that's going to pick up all of the other sounds that are coming from around the room. So yeah, a lot of people like to force enable all bleed, and then when it comes to mixing, they will just mix like they would be mixing a real recorded drum kit, and so they would put gates on each individual track like they would if they were mixing a drum kit that had been recorded in real life. The other option is you could uncheck force enable all bleed and then just come through and choose whichever bleed you want for that individual track. By coming over here and selecting the bleed and the levels. That's obviously a little bit more time consuming, so yeah, it's totally up to you how you want to do it. For this example, I'm just going to say force enable all bleed, and we have this option here, exclude ambience channels with no bleed enabled. So basically, if we tick that, we're only going to get the room channels here, so ambience near, ambience mid, ambience far. The ones that have bleed enabled already, we're going to get them bounced out. But this one, for instance, ambience near, that has no bleed enabled, so Superior Drum is just going to ignore that when it's bouncing out our tracks. So what I like to do is just, when I come back down to here, I'd like to untick that because I like to just get all of the ambience channels bounced out, and then I'll choose afterwards which ones I'm going to use. So I'm going to force enable all bleed, bounce microphone channels pre-mixer, and then I'm going to come down here and click bounce, and then I'm going to create a folder to bounce these into. So I'm just going to call this drum prints. Great. So I'm going to select that folder, hit open, and now it's just going to bounce out all of those tracks for me. So that will just take a minute, and then we'll come back once they're all done. Cool. So our bounce is finished. So we'll hit OK. And then if we just close out of this and we go to our Finder, so I found my drum prints folder here that I bounced these to. So then I can just select all of these, and depending on what DAW you're using, the process here might be slightly different, but with Logic here, I can just select them all and drag them into the session, and I'll just take them right to the very start, and I'll just hit create new tracks here. So that's just going to import all of those files into our session. And then for me, I like to group these all into one bus. So I'm going to select these, and then I'm just going to hit Command Shift D in Logic, and I'm going to select Summing Stack. And then I'm just going to rename this drums, and then I will just make these a color. So I'll hit Option C, and then I will just make these this dark reddish color here. Cool. So the next thing I like to do, just because it makes more sense in my head, obviously these are all arranged in alphabetical order. I like to arrange them where I have the kicks first, and then the snares, and the hi-hats, and so on. It just makes more sense for me. So that's how I like to do it. You can arrange them however you like, obviously. So I'm just going to quickly do that now. Cool, so I've got them all arranged how I like. And as you can see, there's obviously quite a lot of tracks here. This is definitely more than we probably need for most songs, but I like to just put them all into the session anyway, and then I can just pick and choose which ones I like. So generally what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll take down the volume of all of these tracks. So I'll just solo out this drums bus here. I'll pull up the tracks one by one, find which ones I like, and the ones that I don't feel like fit with the song, I'll either delete them, or I will just press H on Logic, and we can just hide them so that they're still in the session, but they just go away. So that's how I like to use Superior Drummer 3 when I'm working on writing and recording a song. I find that it's very easy to just pick a preset and program in your patterns and grooves, and then once you finish, just bounce everything out to audio. Generally, I think bouncing to audio is a good idea, because if you ever want to open the session again in the future, all of those audio tracks will still be there. Whereas if they do updates to plugins and whatnot, sometimes you can have issues when you're trying to recall sessions later on down the line. So bouncing to audio is always a good idea, and Superior Drummer make it very easy with that bounce to audio option, where they just do it all for you, and then you can just import all of those audio tracks. So hopefully you learned something from this video. Hopefully it was helpful. If you want to learn more about writing and recording music, then please check out some of the other videos on my channel. But thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.